Well, hello everyone, and you might be watching this in the afternoon. It's afternoon for us, but it's election season, and we get a lot of questions about what role the chamber plays regarding elections and how we do some of the things we do. Of course, we do a grade card every year after advocating for business at the legislature. The one thing we have also done in the last couple of election cycles is reverse endorsement. And we realize there is a lot of reasons to vote for candidates. And we don't try to cover all of them, but we do try to determine if candidates are business friendly. So today we're going to be talking with the gentlemen that have spent many, many hours talking to candidates, reviewing our priorities from the business community and seeing if they match up with those priorities. So with that, I guess the first thing we'll do is go around and let everybody introduce themselves, and also tell us one interesting thing that you have stumbled across as we've gone through this process, or something that surprised you.
Well, I'm Paul Howard. I've been a longtime chamber member, and this is my second time doing these interviews. What surprises me is that some of the candidates have not looked at information that's public, like budgets. That I find that surprising, because those are very basic things to running for office.
Yeah, I'm Ken Dugas, and this is my second round of candidate interviews as well. And, you know, what has surprised me probably more than anything else is every single person we spoke to loves our community, is highly engaged in wanting to make Cheyenne a better place. And that has made me feel really good about the quality of the people we have running for office.
I'm Pat McGuire, and this is also my second time assisting with this program. And one thing I found, I guess, is that I feel like a much better informed voter now, and not everybody certainly gets the exposure to the candidates that this committee does, but I was certainly kind of amazed at how little I knew before, maybe, in terms of selecting the candidates that I should be voting for.
I'm Dr. Larry Meuli, and this is also my second time to interview the candidates for public office here in Laramie County. I think I'm the only one here that has actually been in the legislature, and I was in the legislature for 10 years. And again, what's been said before, I sometimes am disappointed in how little the candidates know about the office for which they are contesting. And we would like for them to have more ideas of what they would like to do while they're in the public service than what we're actually getting as we talk with the candidates. So anyway, I appreciate this opportunity.
So my turn now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I could say it's been the second time around for me also, because I had to sit through it 2 years ago. But when I did it 2 years ago, I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was a great process. As from the chamber standpoint, you guys have said that you thought the process was better than just filling out a form and having a candidate fill out a form. One, you don't get as many forms turned in, and two, you don't always get the nuance when you talk to them. And as a candidate, I really enjoyed it a lot more, because again, you could add to things that maybe came up in our conversations that got left off the form. So as a candidate 2 years ago, I really liked it and wanted to be a part of the process this time. And the chamber was kind enough to let me participate. I would like to echo my colleagues' points. One, it's been great for knowledge, because there are some races I had no clue who some of these candidates were. So it's been a great education process for me. I'd also like to echo the fact that, again, when you're going to an interview and you think it's important, and you're running for a position, it's like, do your homework, be a little better prepared. So that has been a disappointment. But then I gotta say, there were some that I went in with a preconceived notion that I'm not gonna like this person, and they honestly had pretty good interviews. So it's just been a good, enlightening process overall, I think.
A couple of you mentioned that perhaps there was some candidates that ran for office that didn't have a deep knowledge of the facts of what they were running for. So I think Amber and I here in the chamber, we do most of the state lobbying. And one of the things that interests us is that we get a mail out from a state legislative officer, and they're talking about things that the state legislature doesn't work on. And it kind of
Yeah.
puts me aback to say, well, yeah, but what about how are you going to support local governments? How are you going to make sure education is stable? What are you going to do to ensure that we have power and water? For us, adversarial property ownership and F.E. Warren Air Force Base was important. So I guess my question that I'd like for you guys to address is, did you find quite a bit of that where I'm running for county commissioner, but my issue is a federal issue, or not going to really be in my venue, and I just see that as a tactic to win office? Or did most of them limit their thoughts to what was actually happening for the position that they were running for?
I think most of them stayed in their lane. Some weren't clear as to what was state, what was county, but most of them stayed with the jurisdictions they were going to be part of.
I thought there were times that some of them I thought you should be running for city council, because it seems like that more of your complaints are related to the city than anything else.
So that's a different tact on it, right? So not only they were going things that Congress ought to be handling in DC, but they were also like running for state legislature and saying, I think my roads need paved, my street needs repaved. Interest.
There were some things like that.
I was surprised at the number of candidates that are running for the state legislature that didn't have a good understanding of where property tax revenues went and who benefited from those. That might get back to the earlier points about, candidates not doing their homework. But we had a number of candidates running for the legislature that I feel thought property taxes mostly went to the state.
I was surprised at the number of candidates that thought any revenue shortage problems could be solved by just cutting expenses. And I'm not sure they knew that a lot of positions have been cut at the state level in the past, maybe it's 15 years now, but certainly a lot of positions were reduced, and maybe some of them refilled over time. But I just can't picture that there's enough wasted money in there to fund the things that need to be funded, and not notice that you're taking money away from other services that I think we expect.
Dr. Meuli,
Yes, thank you. The thing that I found interesting and was for me very educational was there were 2 or 3 of the candidates that we interviewed that had been in the legislature for a while, and they were very well informed about what was going on in the legislature. And that made me feel comfortable in saying, we need these people back in the legislature. And then, as we talked earlier, there were quite a few of the candidates who I wish had done more homework so that they would be able to give a better explanation of why they're running for their legislature and what sorts of things they would like to do if they were in the legislature, or whatever position they were going for in our county.
So you bring up the cuts. It seems like the popular thing in Wyoming, we're gonna cut taxes and make it easier here. I think a couple of concerns from the chamber's point of view is that I would say, did you ask the follow-up question of, okay, so you want to cut this, what particular services would you cut to achieve that? And if so, did you hear a common answer for them, or were they kind of spread over the board, or a lot of answers? I don't know what I'd cut. We just need to lower tax.
Yeah, there were no specifics given most of the time, Dale. It was, no, there's just, we're gonna go through and cut waste, and that's how we'll do it.
The thing that I was saying in the question, follow-up questions that we had was, okay, you've said that what we need to do is get away with the waste in government. Give me an example of where you think the waste is. And the response in general was, well, I really need to research that.
You better research it fast if you're going to be in the office in January. So what did you feel like? I mean, they knew they were coming to the Chamber of Commerce, but you feel like that a lot of the candidates understood business. You know, a lot of times on the taxation issue in Wyoming, I mean, certainly we know this in the energy field, but whenever we have made a cut somewhere in government, we didn't really make a cut as much as we made that difference up on the back of business. Do you think that we have a general understanding of why it's important for businesses not to receive this increased burden, or they were really more focused on the individual? That makes sense.
I think most, especially after this last round of legislature with all this property tax reduction, I think most were focused on personal taxes. Although this is where incumbents had an advantage. They understood the puzzle more than people just starting. But the focus was quite a bit on, gee, I'm going to cut taxes for you. Yeah, but there were very, as everyone has said, there are very few answers on how they were going to fill that gap.
I agree that the focus was, or their focus was more on their homeowner constituents than it was on any business constituents, and they would certainly and maybe appropriately, but focus on their serving their constituents in their area.
So hearing some of those comments, how did you handle, or did you handle differently those candidates that, you know, you've sat in the legislature for, you know, 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms? Your knowledge base ought to be quite a bit deeper than some of the others, because we do have a complicated system at the state level anyway to understand in Wyoming. So what are the differences in how you question those folks? Or maybe you did not, but I'd be interested to hear that if you did.
You know, I think we did question those responses. But similar to your earlier question, how that would be accomplished was they were not able to provide us any specifics regarding how that would be accomplished. You know, they had very high level, well, that's going to come from leadership and we'll be able to figure it out. So that's part of what made us feel uncomfortable. And again, gets back to the concern we had about a lack of preparedness. I'll follow up by saying, I think a number of the candidates felt that business could take care of everything, which I was rather surprised by. And, you know, the government didn't need to take care of this. Businesses could take care of it, and we would solve that solution through greater economic development.
I think that is a big concern for chambers across the country, is that we We definitely see in legislatures and governing bodies, from the far left to the far right, this kind of idea, well, if we regulate from our direction, it would be better for business. But from a business perspective, when that restriction comes from either side, it's just as bad. A business person doesn't sit down and determine, oh, we have to meet that requirement, and that was a Democrat or Republican requirement. They just know that it's a requirement they have to hire another person for. So I think that's a pretty interesting thing, that more and more elected officials think somehow business can answer that question. And we worry about that, I think, not just locally, but nationally too, that where will the end of that be? So we've talked quite a bit about the state legislature, but you also interviewed county commission candidates, city council candidates. So what did you hear about growth and development from some of the candidates that were running from county commission or maybe city council, or what were some of their priorities, and maybe priorities we don't think about from business? Anything surprising?
Probably the one common theme that we heard from a question about economic development and workforce was recognition of LCCC and how they contribute to the workforce development and can continue to contribute, hopefully, to the workforce development in the community and new business.
One of the other things that I think that we noticed was the fact that a lot of the candidates did not realize the importance that Leeds has, that the Chamber of Commerce has, and that our elected officials have, as far as getting business, helping business, and recruiting businesses to Wyoming.
I think that's probably pretty common, and I think interestingly, when you look at rankings for Wyoming for cost of doing business and business friendly, we rank about 46th out of 50. So we've got some work to do, and I think most folks who run for office somehow think that we are very, very business friendly and that we have very little improvement to do. There are some wonderful things here. I think we all know that, but we all I think need to know that there are some pretty significant challenges if we want our kids and grandkids to have jobs in the community that we're going to have to figure out. So, Dr. Rinne, any surprising things from you hearing those discussions? You've been a veteran of local government, so anything that stood out to you?
The one on local government, both commission and council, the question that actually disappointed me that many of them had not put a lot of thought into was knowing that we were probably going to have another 6-penny election in 2026. So it would be in the middle of their term. But so many of them had really not given any thought to what kind of projects they would like to see on that. As all of us know, that's the mechanism the state has given us to do some of the great things that we've done in our community, and some of the ways we've upgraded our community and made it a more attractive place to live. And so I was actually surprised that not many of them had put much thought into what was coming, because that's going to be a big decision that's going to fall in the middle of their term.
I think that goes back to that understanding of how things are funded, right? That you think that some of those property taxes or a big chunk of taxes money that the state receives are somehow available for local governments, and they miss the nuance that in order to drive the community forward, to have good road, to have all those things that they said they wanted for your street to get paved, you're probably going to have to be supportive of 5th or 6th penny. So we need to have, and that's a finite, kind of not finite, but it is a limited amount of money. And we're going to have some pretty significant priorities there. So we will
It
continue.
is.
Yeah.
You know, another question, many of them had talked about, oh, we need more police officers. But I don't think any of them talked to Chief Francisco, because we added 4 or 5 officers in the last year or two. So I mean, we've already tried to beef up the force and answer that question. So you know, again, it was kind of surprising. There's a lot of information you can be had, and out there, either picking up the phone and calling someone or looking online. And I don't know where people are looking, but they weren't going to the resources that are available.
Yeah, and so I think look for that nuance of what the answer is too, right? We crime, especially local crime, retail crime, has been a pretty important issue for us here at the chamber. And you know, the answers that we get from companies are not really that we need more cops. It's been answers and resources for other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're getting the hook here. And so closing thoughts from you guys. What would you tell people about this process, and what would you say about the election cycle that we're getting ready to go through?
Comment on the election cycle. I give all these folks credit for coming, whether they get the endorsement or not. You know, we didn't get every candidate for every office, but we got quite a few, and they respect what the chamber does. And whether or not they agree with us on everything, they thought it worthwhile to come here, and I thought that was good.
Yeah, and I'll just echo on the Paul's response. Every single one of them said they really appreciated the opportunity to sit down and have the conversation, and how they appreciated that much more than filling out a questionnaire.
I just want to say to chamber members, and actually the general public, just be informed. Like, talk to these people where you can. Pay attention to the chamber's endorsements, because there are some great candidates out there, and there are some not so good ones out there. And I know sometimes people say our vote doesn't really count, but in local elections, it does count. You know, national elections, depending on which party you're in, you're either part of the landslide or you're under it. But for local elections, it makes a huge difference in what Cheyenne, as a place to live and as a place to have business, is going to be like.
I would just say, please consider the endorsements that you see from the chamber, but also look at the list of candidates that are running, and do a little research beyond what you just see in the newspaper, or look at some of the other interviews that they have with other organizations, and get a feel for how knowledgeable they are, and how you think they're gonna perform in the seats that they're looking for.
Yes, I would recommend that all the voters take time to really research the candidates that are running for office and know what it is that they stand for, and realize that the candidates that we have endorsed do support the philosophy and the standards that business has here in the community, and what the Chamber of Commerce thinks is very important. The other thing that I would suggest you do, I think it's worthwhile to figure out which candidates did not feel it was necessary to know what the business community thought. And there were a fair number of candidates that decided not to interview with us, and that's their choice. But I think it'd be worth your while to know who those candidates are. Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And I would just say, get out and vote. You know, the things you can do to help this. You can talk to your employees about voting. You can't tell them who to vote for, but you can tell them issues that will impact your business. Consider giving them a 15 extra minutes on lunch hour to go vote. There's a lot of things that you can do to encourage participation that will make sure that Cheyenne, Laramie County, and the state of Wyoming have a very vibrant future. So don't forget to vote. It's coming up. Do your research and take Aunt Ethel with you. She's what just needs a ride. Give her a ride to the polls. Thank you guys for listening. Talk to you later. Bye.